Afraid that the landlord next door might overhear him, Chen Ji lowered his voice to a whisper, which created an unintended tense atmosphere. After he was done, on the other end of the phone, He-san was stunned. This honest young man who just came to the city from the countryside to attend medical school did not expect his first conversation with an online friend to be so freaking exciting. You're currently at that cursed apartment. Yes. And the landlord next door might be the killer from several years ago. Yes. Wait a minute, this is too much for me to process at once, let me think about it first. This created an interesting contrast between the situations on both sides of the phone. One was wrapped in his warm blanket, chewing on KFC, watching some online videos, while the other was caught in a haunted apartment, heavy with gloom and anguish. Boss, I still think you should report this to the police. Granted, you don't have any actual proof, but compared to the offense of making a fake report, your life is more important. He-san was merely looking out for him, but Chen Ji had his own consideration. This murder by midnight was a mission given to him by the black phone. He had to stay there overnight for the mission to be a success. Interference from the police would most likely ruin his mission. Since it involved the unlocking of a new scenario, surrendering just like that felt like a great waste. It's still not yet time to involve the police. Mainly, it's your safety that you should be concerned about, boss. How about this? He-san paused before adding, turn on your phone's GPS triangulation and try to keep your phone on throughout the night. I'll pay attention to the sounds from your side, and if there's anything weird, I'll call the police immediately. That was not a bad idea. Chen Ji looked at his phone. He still had not exited the video sharing app, and there was an advertisement for a mukbang stream going on. Suddenly an idea came into Chen Ji's mind. Why don't I open a live stream at the haunted apartment? If anything dangerous happens to me, the viewers will be able to help me alert the police, and the recording of the live stream will be the best evidence. Of course, I hope for everything to go well, and with this method, I'll be able to attract more viewers to my page and thus advertise my haunted house. The short video from last night had brought Chen Ji about 1,000 new followers, and consequently the number of visitors at his haunted house the next day had doubled. This was a workable method. Furthermore, the ultimate goal of him entering the haunted apartment was to earn the mission reward to improve his haunted house. If starting a live stream was able to ensure his safety while he was conducting his mission as well as increase his popularity and viewership, then why not? Even though I don't have the budget to advertise my stuff all over the place, I can rely on live streams and short videos to attract people's attention. What Chen Ji was lacking in were platform, channels, and experience in terms of content. He was not at all worried. Even though the personnel from the studio earlier was annoying, they were right. Modern entertainment was about instant gratification. What could be more exciting and intense than an overnight stay at a haunted apartment and a possible tussle with a crazed murderer? Viewership followed content, and compared to other streamers, Chen Ji had a unique leg up. All of his content and the stuff that he experienced was all real, there was no plot or script, and even he had no idea what might happen next. In a way, the live stream was merely a recording of him completing the mission dispensed by the black phone. He-san, I'm ending the call. Come directly to my live stream, the stream's ID will be similar to the ID on my personal page. After hanging up, Chen Ji turned on his phone's triangulation system and set 991 as his quick dial. After everything was done, he selected the live stream option on the video sharing app. Videos nowadays were normally only several 10 seconds long, meaning they were hard to monetize. Therefore, to improve fan loyalty and more directly monetize follower numbers, most streams would livestream when they were not preparing to release a new video. Since short videos were easily shared, they could be used to attract the attention of random viewers. Then, with live streams, those viewers could be turned into followers if the streamer's content was interesting enough. Incidentally, Chen Ji had stumbled across the most correct way of establishing one's online brand. Overnight at a haunted house. Your host, an intrepid explorer. Exposing the parts of the world that are normally hidden from sight. Chen Ji used several exclamation marks in his title to separate his live stream from others. To be honest though, he need not have done that. The live stream function attached to the video sharing app was ultimately different from a streaming website. The categorization was limited and mostly involved talking to scantily dressed girls. Chen Ji's live stream was like a pile of cow dung amid a bed of roses. It was incredibly hard for him to not get noticed. After opening the live stream, his fans that followed him would be notified, and similarly, there would be an announcement at his profile page. In less than few seconds, the first batch of viewers arrived. He-san was the first to message. Boss, you're serious? You're really going to live stream this? Death to All Men posted, you're the creep who uploaded that video yesterday night. Good, because I'm here to claim your life. FCK. Sis, what happened to you? Calm down, maybe we can talk this out. Creep-host, subbed, posted I'm a little greenworm. Any subs know what the content of this stream is? Do you not know how to read? The title is right there. The moment Chen Ji began the livestream, those who were waiting for his video showed themselves, and the viewership of his room slowly climbed. Guys, I think there's a misunderstanding. Chen Ji put his mallet away and turned to the camera seriously. The video from last night wasn't a joke, I experienced it myself. You can go look for the full video on supernatural forums if you do not believe me. The footage has not been tempered, the thing in the mirror is real. I know that is hard to believe, but if you follow me, I'll unveil the hidden side of this world to you little by little. Hello 001, I'm sorry, but what is the number for mental hospital? I believe I found a runaway patient. I do love the way you bulls HT. Li Ming. I know you're watching livestream, go buy some supper for me. Fried noodles, no chili, thanks. Busan Mental Hospital Room 31, subbing to the host. In support of our friend finding a new job. Several notices appeared on screen, and all of them showed disbelief at Chen Ji's promise. The man wasn't fazed. I don't mind if you think I'm crazy because you'll soon see how wrong you all are. The viewership continued to climb. Chen Ji turned to look at the night sky that was darkening. He lit a cigarette and started explaining the bloody history of Fuan Apartments to his viewers. A mysterious fire, a disappeared killer, Chen Ji realized he had a talent for storytelling. He managed to summarize the many news articles he had read and combine them with his own hypotheses, creating a believable and intriguing tale for his viewers. That is what has happened. To search for inspiration for my haunted house, I decided to stay overnight at this cursed apartment, but I came across a startling discovery. Every single tenant of this apartment has something off about them, and I suspect that the murderer from years ago is masquerading as one of them. Chen Ji snuffed his cigarette off and turned to address the camera. Interesting, so a real-life murder mystery. Anyone have a brilliant idea as to who the real killer is? I'm a little greenworm mocked. Host, you sure know how to bulls HT, but we're not that gullible. Jiujiang City's Fuan Apartments, I just looked it up on the internet, the host doesn't seem like he's lying. He-san showed some support. I believe the host. However, I'm a little greenworm was not easily convinced. Even if the host isn't lying about the case, how do we know that he is currently at the cursed apartment? As he said earlier, the place was burned down. But take a good look at the room he's room. The wall is clean and painted, and all the furniture looks usable albeit a little bit old. Does this look like a cursed apartment to any of you? I won't lie to you guys about that. You want proof? Easy. Chen Ji moved the makeup counter away and pulled his penknife. He scratched away a small corner of the paint on the wall. The name of a building can be changed, and the place can be refurnished and repainted, but certain things cannot be removed or hidden. He removed the freshest layer of wall paint to reveal the brickwork underneath, which was charred black. This is evidence that this place was the crime scene of the fire. No, I'm interested in why you would bring a mallet and a knife to stay at a hostel, for self-defense. Death to all man raised an obvious concern. Host is ruining the wall for no reason. 1 minute of silence for the poor landlord. How much did you pay for a room like this? It doesn't even have a television. Looking at the chat log, Chen Ji could not help but sigh. Guys, can you not focus on the irrelevant points? How about some respect? I'm putting my life on the line to do this livestream for you. Death to all man donated $1. $1 donation as sign of respect. Chen Ji was helpless dealing with the online trolls, but at least they didn't leave him. Fine, let's get back to business. I've met 6 different individuals since I arrived at this apartment. The first person I met was a woman who might have a little mental problem. When I arrived, she smiled wickedly at me unprompted. This unhinged me slightly, but since I have had no further interaction with this woman, there's nothing else I can say. Chen Ji introduced all of the tenants to his viewers, and when he was done, he added his own analysis. In terms of motive, the landlord is definitely the most suspicious, but his movement speed is hindered due to his limp. So, viewed from this perspective, the tattoo guy on first floor and the fat man on second floor have the greatest possibility of being the killer. Of course, one can't ignore the woman and the seemingly weak Wang Qi. Basically, you've come up with nothing, death to all man surmised. Based on your analysis, I've further suspicion that the real killer is the old man in the wheelchair. After all, he stood to gain the most from the fire. That might not be that implausible. After all, the old man might be incapacitated now, but that doesn't mean that he was the same 4 years ago. Furthermore, the crime we're talking about is a fire that doesn't require physical prowess, so the old man is a valid suspect. Also, have you considered the possibility of the old man faking his disability? Oftentimes, the most unlikely one is the killer. Actually, I have more suspicion toward the woman on the first floor. She smiled at the host, meaning she wanted to communicate something to the host. Host, can you still remember the curve of the woman's lips and the degree to which her mouth was open when she smiled at you? I'll help you analyze it from the perspective of psychology. I can't. As the interest of the viewers rose, so did the popularity of his livestream. Chen Ji looked at the busy chat log and sighed internally. He thought to himself, these people are hopeless. Looks like I'll have to go out to look for more clues before I can come to any conclusion. He placed his phone before him, adding, I did try to look around the building before starting the livestream. I discovered while most of the apartment's first and second floor has been fixed up, parts of the third floor have been left as they were 4 years ago. In a little bit, I will go up to conduct a closer examination. Hopefully, we'll be able to come up with some useful clues. The place is kept like it was 4 years ago. That's kinda sick. The ghosts of the families have been lingering because the case hasn't been solved. Investigating a haunted apartment at night. The host sure is insane. Of course, the host is the operator of a haunted house after all. Let me tell you, last time a bunch of us visited his haunted house to demand reparation for his scary video, but we got our backsides handed to us instead. 2 of the bravest among our group went in, one came out crying inconsolably, and the other fainted on the spot. Wait, what happened to them? And what about those who are not as brave? Have you lost your mind? Do you think the rest of us entered his haunted house after we saw what happened? You're right. LOL. Commented He-san. The chat had completely derailed, but Chen Ji didn't mind it that much. He pocketed his penknife, and with one hand holding the phone, the other holding the mallet, he walked to his room door. Learning from his previous lesson, Chen Ji squatted down to look at the shadows underneath the door and confirmed that there was no one standing on the other side before lightly pushing the door open. After he closed and locked the door, Chen Ji yanked one of his hairs out to stick it into the keyhole. This way, if someone entered his room when he was not there, he would know because the hair would have been pushed further into the keyhole. After everything was prepared, Chen Ji walked to the stairwell. His steps were light to not activate the light on his phone guiding his every step. As he climbed up the stairs, the walls on each side became noticeably darker in color, and there was an indescribable smell in the air. When he reached the 3rd floor, Chen Ji turned on the flashlight function on his phone. He leaned against the wall and focused. When he first accidentally walked up to the 3rd floor, he had noticed a dark shadow flash before him. The shape of the shadow had looked like a human. Be it a ghost or a man, I have to be careful. The flashlight revealed to Chen Ji the crime scene from 4 years ago. Looking at the scratch marks that seemed to embed themselves into the wall, Chen Ji's grip around the mallet tightened. Hanging Apartments had a unique architectural style. It only had one staircase, and it was on the right side of the building, giving the impression that the corridor leading to the left side was suspiciously long. As he walked down the corridor, he felt a chilliness tingle his spine. Even with his back to the wall, Chen Ji felt weirdly exposed. If the starting point of the fire was the 3rd floor, then all this wouldn't have been preserved, so the killer probably didn't come up to the 3rd floor at the time. Chen Ji continued down the darkened corridor. The doors on his either side had been warped by fire, exposing singed and ruined rooms. Navigating the trash that littered the floor, Chen Ji scurried into the closest room that he could get into. The small room had a leak in the ceiling, and the windows were barred, causing damp to seep into the walls and a festering smell from the heavy moldy to fill the room. It was uncomfortable. Chen Ji walked into the room to take a closer look at the wooden planks that barred the windows. They looked surprisingly unworn, suggesting they were a recent addition. This is just a common guest room. The ruined furniture had been removed, and the room was barren. There was basically nothing in sight. Then again, years have passed. Even if there was evidence, it wouldn't have been preserved for so long. Chen Ji exited the room and continued down the darkened corridor. Most of the rooms were empty. The corridor was choked full of trash and abandoned paraphernalia, making it difficult for him to navigate. A person's trash can often reflect their lifestyle and attitude. Perhaps this litter will provide the clues that I need. After setting a new goal, Chen Ji trudged through the rubbish in spite of the disgusting smell. About 1 hour later, he did come up with some interesting findings. Why are there toy dolls? There are no children among the people I have seen, so who do these belong to? Chen Ji spent another hour sifting through the trash, and he ended up with 4 ragdolls. Submerged underneath the sea of trash, the 4 ragdolls would not have captured Chen Ji's attention if not for the fact he was a toy design major. The 4 dolls had probably been left there for quite some time already, because they were covered with dirty stains and mold had infested certain parts. The toys were so fragile that if Chen Ji was not careful, he could easily pull out clumps of dirty wool. Chen Ji studied them closely and realized even though the dolls were all of different types, they came from the same manufacturer. Could it be that the toys were left behind by the ex-tenants of Ping An Apartments? However, Chen Ji very soon vetoed this possibility. The low possibility of a family with children moving into a rundown apartment like this aside, even if there was one, it was unlikely for one family to own 4 dolls at the same time. After all, they came from the same manufacturer. Furthermore, based on the design and stylings, these were manufactured several years ago. The toy market updated constantly. Before he took over the haunted house, Chen Ji had worked at a toy company, so he did know a thing or two about the toy market. If these weren't left behind by the new tenants, then it's possible they belonged to the original tenants of Fu An Apartments, Chen Ji speculated. The original owner of the apartment had 2 daughters, so if I'm not mistaken, these should belong to them. However, if that was true, another question needed answering. This place was almost completely ruined by the fire, so how did these 4 dolls survive? Is it a coincidence or did someone purposely keep them at a place that would be safe from the fire? Chen Ji felt like he was on the right track. The only person who could that is the killer themselves. But why would the killer risk their life to protect these 4 dolls? Are these items of importance to them? The zipper on the back of the doll was all rusted, so Chen Ji tore open the fabric directly. Among the cotton, he discovered a card. It fit perfectly inside his palm. It was a love letter. The action was so cheesy that Chen Ji cringed on the person's behalf. Sticking love letter inside a doll. Goodness, that sure is cheesy. If this was the murderer, then he was definitely a shy and reserved man. He did not have the courage to confess in person, so he gifted the girl the doll, hoping that she would discover the secret that was hidden within. Compelled by curiosity, Chen Ji tore open another 2 dolls. Each of them contained a card, and the content was almost similar to the first one. However, when he tore open the last doll, a chill ran down his spine. Instead of a love ladder, the cotton was filled with shredded pieces of paper, and if placed together, they all read, "Go to hell." Confession of love for some reason turned into curses. What happened in between, Chen Ji had no way of telling. These should all have been left behind by the killer, so they are crucial evidence. He picked out several paper pieces and shoved them in his pocket. As he was about to walk deeper into the house, the voice-activated light at the staircase suddenly came on. SHT. Someone's coming. Desperate to escape, Chen Ji turned off the flashlight on his phone, grabbed the dolls, and ran into the guest room that was closest to him. Holding his breath, Chen Ji hid behind the door and looked out at what was happening through the crack between the door and its frame. The sound of footsteps became clearer, and the conversation between a male and a female floated up the stairs. "We have to move that thing out soon, we can't delay any more. The new tenant has been up to the 3rd floor already. Thankfully, he turned back at the staircase or else he would have spotted me. I know, there have been more and more new people coming here recently, we have to deal with that thing as soon as we can." Agreed. Inform everyone, and tell them to be prepared. We'll dig it out tonight and bury it up the hills. The person was carrying an old-fashioned oil lamp, and with the light's help, Chen Ji managed to see that the 2 people talking were the landlord and the woman from the 1st floor. Why would they come up to the 3rd floor in the middle of the night? Chen Ji pushed himself against the wall to ensure they would not see him. Not long after that, the tattoo guy and the fat man whom he had seen earlier all came up the stairs. They were all wrapped up in black clothes and carried equipment like wires, a gunny sack, and cleavers. What are they up to? The small group stood in the corridor, and it felt like they were in the middle of an argument. The fat man, who was walking at the back, had his head drooped while he groused, "Do we really have to do this? If we dig it out, our fingerprints will easily get left behind, things will be incredibly hard to explain then." "And you think it's easy to explain now?" The landlord glared at the fat man. "Stop complaining and start moving. I think we should call the cops." The fat man stood where he was. The tattoo guy walked over to grip the man's collar, hissing into his face, "Have you lost your mind? Do you want to die so badly? If we involve the police, we'll be their prime suspects. During the investigation, your hit and run and our illegal occupation of the old man's property will all be exposed." "Honey, calm down." The woman walked over to place her hand on the tattoo guy's arm. "We're all in the same boat, so instead of turning on each other, we'd better get moving. None of us have a clean record, and it was not easy for us to finally find ourselves a comfortable lair. If any of you dare get any other ideas, you'd better watch out." The landlord tossed the iron hammer in his hands to the fat man. You go and take the first crack. Me. Sweat covered the fat man's forehead immediately. His face blanched as he dragged the mallet across the floor. As he continued to observe, the more Chenji felt something was wrong. What are they planning to dig up? The fat man walked to the deepest part of the staircase. He moved the trash to the side and, under the other tenants' careful scrutiny, parted the curtain that was originally hidden behind the mountain of trash. It was a fortified cement wall, and embedded inside the wall was a female body that was facing away from the group. Chenji clamped his mouth to prevent himself from making a noise. When he saw the body, he immediately messaged T-san. Call the police now. There was no light in the staircase, and a door stood between them and Chenji, so the viewers had no idea what was happening. Then again, Chenji had no time for them at a moment like that. He leaned closer to the crack, with nary the courage to even blink. The body is hidden inside the wall, and that's what they're trying to dig up, Chenji thought to himself. He did not dare make any sudden movement. He was in a very vulnerable position, the few tenants were only several steps away from him. They would have spotted him if they turned around to walk into the room he was hiding in. Are you playing with sand at the beach? Put some muscle into it. The landlord cursed as he walked over to the body. He laid the gunny sack open on the ground and squatted down to clear away the cement around the body. Probably afraid that they might wake up the other tenants, their movements were light and didn't make any sound. The wall was pried open, and the cement dust fell all over the place. Everyone was sweating profusely, but it was unclear whether it was a nervous sweat or sweat from the manual labor. They shared the work, but since this was the first time they had done something like this, everyone was still feeling a bit weirded out, which slowed down their progress considerably. 10 minutes later, they finally managed to extricate the body from the wall and placed it inside the gunny sack. Fatty, you stay back to clean up the mess, the rest of us will take her up the hill to bury her. The landlord passed the hammer over as he gave the orders. I'm coming with you. The rotund man said immediately. This whole exercise had drained him both physically and mentally, he didn't have the guts to be left all alone in the dark. Would you man up a little? The landlord turned to say to the only woman of the group, then, Warner, you stay back to accompany him, we'll meet up at the same place later up on the hill. Then he went down the stairs carrying the gunny sack with the tattooed man. His footsteps were alternatively heavy and light on account of his limp. When he passed the room Chenji was hiding in, he suddenly stopped. Why is there so much cotton on the floor? Chenji's heart was at his throat when he heard that question from the landlord. When he tore the dolls open, some shredded cotton and paper pieces had inadvertently fallen on the floor. At the time, it had been too dark for him to notice them, and now, it was too late for him to retrieve it. It's probably just rubbish. We'll deal with it later, this thing is heavy, let's deal with the more important matter first, the tattooed guy who was behind him, urged. The landlord nodded, and the two continued on down the corridor and the stairs. Fatty, don't just stand there, start working. The woman and the fat man worked together to pick up all the trash and wiped away the blood stains that were left on the tools. Several minutes later, they also went down the stairs hauling a hug sack. Their footsteps gradually disappeared. It was not until the third floor became totally quiet that Chenji dared to breathe. He was cautious as he leaned to look through the crack. The corridor was dark and empty. Everyone had left. FCK. That scared the crap out of me. He waited for another 3 minutes. When he was sure they were not coming back, Chenji inched out from behind the door and walked out on tiptoes. To prevent discovery, he did not use the phone. He placed his hand on the wall and slowly found his way forward. Based on their conversation, yes, those people aren't totally innocent, but the female body in the wall doesn't seem like it has anything to do with them. If anything, they were a certain kind of unlucky. After seizing the old man's property, they were left with a body in the wall to be dealt with. The first reaction for any normal individual under such circumstances would have been to call the police, but since they each had a crime they were hiding from, they could not do that. In the end, they had no choice but to help the real murderer keep this a secret, and now they even had to help the murderer bury the evidence. No wonder the landlord reminded me multiple times to not wander around the building after dark. After Chenji's eyes got used to the darkness, his speed increased. He could not wait to get out of the building. Chenji decided to give up on his backpack and directly went down to the first floor. FCK. The front door was locked, meaning he was trapped inside the building. These people still remembered. To lock the door even when they were going out to bury a body, a twinge of fear curled up within Chenji's heart. The windows on the first floor are all fixed with anti-theft netting, and the ones on the third floor are all barred with wooden planks, so my only route of escape is through the windows on the second floor. The longer he stayed inside the apartment, the more anxious he felt. Chen Ji clutched the mallet in his hand as he returned to the second floor. The corridor looked ominous in the dark, like the gaping maw of a monster. This is too quiet. Chen Ji's room was next to the landlord's, which was at the deepest end of the corridor. He was tense, afraid that any of the room door would suddenly open. Holding his breath, Chen Ji slid silently down the corridor to his room. Thankfully, there were no surprises. If I tie the bedspread together, it should be long enough for me to jump out the window and reach the first floor. Chen Ji found his key and used his phone's torch to locate the keyhole. As he was about to stick the key in, his hand froze. Where's the hair that I stuck in the keyhole? His hair stood on end and fear swamped Chen Ji on all sides. His limbs were frozen solid. Someone has gone inside my room. They know I'm not in my room. Chen Ji's breathing turned rapid. He felt like there was a piece of ice stuck in his lung. When did they get in? After digging up the body? Or when they saw the cotton on the floor? In reality, the answer was not that important. Chen Ji took several steps back, and he gradually calmed down, staring at the closed door of his room. I can't go into the room, they're probably waiting inside to ambush me. Chen Ji got used to the situation fast enough thanks to his powerful heart. He had to get out of that place as fast as he could or else he would be in mortal danger. Chen Ji did not make any noise as he took further steps back. He knew clearly, other than the windows on the second floor, there was no other exit out of the apartment. Making as little noise as he could, Chen Ji retreated to the rightmost corner of the corridor. This was the farthest from his room. These tenants are far more dangerous than I expected. Whether I'll be able to survive tonight or not all depends on this gamble. Chen Ji gritted his teeth and raised his mallet to knock heavily on the door lock of the most right-hand side room. The curious silence of Ping and apartments was shattered. Chen Ji slammed on the lock like he was crazy. Following the loud bangs, the individuals that he had no interest of seeing at all appeared. The door to room 208, the room that Chen Ji had rented, was shoved open. The tattooed guy and the landlord rushed out of it brandishing an iron hammer and a cleaver. They dashed at Chen Ji with scary expressions. Please open. The lock finally snapped under pressure, and without hesitation, Chen Ji kicked the room door open. The door slammed heavily on the wall as Chen Ji dashed into the room and yanked the window open. FCK. It's so high. Standing at the window, the drop was at least 3 to 4 meters. Hasty footsteps echoed louder and louder, meaning the landlord and the tattooed guy were closing in on him. Chen Ji did not have the luxury of time. He jumped out of the window, grabbing the sill by the ledge as one of his legs found purchase on the first floor window's anti-theft steel netting. He must have seen us move the body. We mustn't let him get away. The landlord's ugly mug appeared at the door. Flashing the cleaver in the air, he hissed, "You think you can escape?" Chen Ji did not dare hesitate and let go instantly. His arms were scratched, and his clothes was torn by the netting as he slid down the wall. Chen Ji rolled as he landed to reduce the impact. As he straightened himself, he grabbed the mallet off the floor and ran toward the gate. Quick, grab him! The landlord roared as he lobbed the cleaver at Chen Ji. Chen Ji felt something fly past him. Looking at the cleaver that was stuck deep into the grass, he shivered in fear. If I fall into the hands of these people, they'll definitely kill me. The apartment's front door swung open then, and the fat man and the woman, who had been waiting on the first floor, gave chase after him, each holding hedge clippers in their hands. Bunch of crazies. Chen Ji ran as fast as he could. He shot like an arrow to the gate. Stepping on the newly changed lock, he climbed up the rusted gate. The apartment building was surrounded by a rather dense forest. In the dark, with no light, he could not even see where he was going. However, with a bunch of homicidal crazies chasing after him, Chen Ji had no choice but to brave the possibility of getting lost and head into the forest. As he ran through the brush, the ray of flashlights occasionally cut through the darkness, and the cursing of the landlord and the tattooed guy came from behind him. Chen Ji did not even dare turn around. He only had one thought on his mind: escape. His clothes were torn by the twigs and branches, his body was covered in mud and leaves. After 15 minutes of full speed running, Chen Ji believed he had finally managed to outrun the landlord's group. He half squatted inside a bush and saw the dim light that lit up some place far away. His fingers snuck into the fresh soil, and he gasped greedily for air. That was way too close. When he was trapped inside the apartment, if he had made one wrong move, he would have died. Jesus, the difficulty of this trial mission is too damn high. The mission dispensed by the black phone liked to toy with his life, and the worst thing was, this was happening to him in real life. Temporarily shaking off the landlord's group did not mean that he was safe. Chen Ji shrank into the bush, and he was still afraid that when he turned, he would suddenly see the landlord's group behind him with clippers and cleavers. When his heart rate returned to normal, Chen Ji slowly extricated himself from the bush. The sign of the flashlights had completely disappeared. The forest was quiet, even the birds were not singing. Which direction is out? Chen Ji had to admit he was completely lost. Should I hide in here until dawn? Chen Ji pulled out his phone and realized the live stream was still going on. The screen had been black for more than 1 hour already. The chat log was filled with question marks. Even the more experienced viewers had no idea what was going on inside this curious live stream. He did not waste time to explain himself. He glanced at the time and was about to click open the message that had come from He-san when he suddenly heard the sound of leaves crunching coming from behind him. Chen Ji immediately stuck his phone back into his pocket, lest the light from the screen exposed him. Clutching the mallet tightly, he was so nervous that even his palms were sweating, and he stared in the direction where the sound had come from. Not long after that, a ray of dim light cut through the darkness. Just as Chen Ji was about to use his mallet, a familiar voice asked, "Is someone there?" "Who is it?" "Wang Qi. Didn't he leave the apartment long ago? Why is he here at the middle of the night?" Chen Ji thought to himself. Even though Chen Ji was curious, he understood curiosity killed the cat, so he stayed where he was. Was I mistaken? Impossible. Wang Qi waved his flashlight around and paced around the area. I mustn't let him see me. This person's problem is even bigger than the tenants of Ping An Apartments. Chen Ji did not show himself. Instead, he retreated further away from Wang Qi. After moving for a while, Chen Ji realized the hill was becoming steeper. He seemed to have gone the wrong direction and wandered around to the other side of the hill. After exiting a thick bush, a secluded estate appeared before him. Surrounded by trees sat a very simple-looking wooden house. There was a wooden sign tacked to the door, and as he wandered closer, he saw it read, "Fire is a very dangerous thing in the forest, so be careful when using flames. Saving the environment starts with you, do not litter." This looks like a resting house for the forest rangers. He tried pushing the door, and it was not locked. As it creaked open, a weird smell drifted out from within. What is it? He did not dare turn on the flashlight on his phone, only using the brightness of his screen. The wooden house was small, but it was filled with various everyday items. It looked more like a landfill site. Chen Ji sniffed the air and walked toward the source of the weird smell. It was a bed. He flipped the wooden mattress up, and underneath, he saw clothes that had gone moldy. A hoarder. The discovery was even weirder than he had predicted. All the clothes were for a female, and they appeared worn and unwashed. Chen Ji pulled several articles of clothing out and realized they were of the same size. This meant that they probably all belonged to the same person. The mud stuck to the clothes hasn't even dried yet, meaning they have been worn recently. With the mortician's makeup skill, Chen Ji had gained a thorough understanding of human anatomy. As he used his fingers to measure the size of the clothes, the image of the female body that was embedded in the wall appeared in his mind. The size matches perfectly. These clothes probably belonged to the woman inside the wall. But why would a dead woman's clothes be hidden inside this wooden house? And why had they been worn several days ago? Chen Ji's heart started to race. He placed the clothes on the floor and realized there were some paper notes stuck to some of them. He picked them up for a closer look and realized they were all filled with proclamations like "I love you." This handwriting, Chen Ji pulled out the notes from the dolls. Under close examination, the two looked 90% similar. The dolls were from 5 years ago, and these female clothes were obviously dumped here only several weeks ago. There are years apart between them, so why do they share so many similarities? Same handwriting, same love notes. Could the culprit for both cases have been the same person? Chen Ji picked up the clothes to throw them back under the bed. It was then that a phone with pink case fell from one of the pockets. A phone. Chen Ji picked it up. He realized that the phone was on the messages page. Whoever was using the phone had been writing a message. "Save me." A chill ran down Chen Ji's spine. He exited the page and looked through the message history. All of them were the same, and they only had 2 words, "Save me." Chen Ji looked through the sent dates of all the messages, and they were all 1 day apart and sent at midnight. This matched perfectly with what Wang Qi said, but it was also the detail that made Chen Ji shiver in terror. How could a body frozen inside a wall send a message punctually every night? Supernatural activity. If this was truly the work of a powerful specter, how was that group of tenants, who had disturbed the body, still alive? Something is wrong. Chen Ji lined up all the clues, and the thought dawned upon him. The person who has been sending Wang Qi messages every night is the killer of his fiancée, as well as the real killer responsible for the arson years ago. And I think I know that person is, Chen Ji thought, standing inside the wooden house. Wang Qi is thought a mad person by every tenant in the apartment, and the landlord chases him out every time he sees him. But more than that, he is the only person I saw tonight who isn't a tenant at the apartment. In spite of that, he appears often enough within the vicinity of the apartment. This means that his actual place of accommodation must be very close to the apartment. But the question is, when I was arguing with the landlord about the rental, he told me confidently that there is no other place to live within several thousand meters. In other words, Wang Qi couldn't be living at another nearby apartment or hotel. In that case, this wooden house is probably where he lives when he's not out spreading those notices. If he's the resident of this wooden house, then many things can be explained. The pitiable man who wanders about every day, asking about his missing fiancée, is probably his own fiancée's killer. Chen Ji had a hard time believing that he had chatted so amiably with a cold-blooded murderer and even attempted to share his sad history with the man. He swallowed deeply, and it was then that he felt fear. This madman must have been through some trauma to have the need to collect the dead woman's clothes and even use the woman's phone to message himself every night. Perhaps there's another personality that lives inside his body that comes out to take over his body after he falls asleep. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy Chen Ji became. He looked through the phone to try to come up with more clues. This phone should be covered with his fingerprints, so it is an important piece of evidence. I have to take good care of it. As Chen Ji looked at the screen, perhaps it was the nervousness, or perhaps it was something else, he saw a girl's figure appear on screen. She looked to be 18 or 19 and was wearing a blood-dyed school uniform. He rubbed his eyes to attempt to take a closer look when he felt a chill run up the back of his neck like something was brushing its hand along it. This made Chen Ji jump and turn back to look. The air in the wooden house froze, and Chen Ji's heart almost jumped out of its cage when he saw what was behind him. The door of the wooden house had been opened silently, and standing about 2 meters behind him was Wang Qi with his eyes bloodshot, raising an axe slowly up in the air. Time seemed to have stopped as the two men looked at each other, neither daring to move. So close, Wang Qi's voice was completely different from before. It seemed like the madness that was suppressed earlier had been unleashed. Chen Ji did not say anything in return, but his grip on the mallet tightened. He was feeling rather grateful toward the specter. If she had not shown up to warn him, his head would have been rolling on the floor. Such a waste. Wang Qi took a step forward, and Chen Ji immediately held his mallet up in a guarded manner. Relax, you've seen the stuff inside the phone. Chen Ji did not know what the madman was up to, so he did not dare let his guard down. Actually, if you think about it, I haven't really lied to you. The lethargy that Chen Ji saw earlier had completely disappeared. If anything, Wang Qi seemed to be in a very excited state. It felt like Chen Ji was dealing with a different person compared to the one he talked to that afternoon. When you first talked to me when you entered the apartment, I already told you my fiancé was hidden inside the apartment, did I not? See, I haven't lied to you, have I? He used the blunt end of the axe to pick up the clothes his fiancé once wore. After all, it was me who personally sealed her up inside the wall. Then Wang Qi's tone turned, his emotions raged like he was reminded of a traumatic event. He used the axe to split the clothes in two. I did nothing wrong, she's the one who made the mistake. She wanted to leave, so what could I do but try my best to make her stay? Wang Qi blocked the door with the axe swaying in his hand. As he stared at the chopped fabric, he said, I didn't want to do it, you understand, right? I didn't mean it. Regardless of what Wang Qi said, it was an undeniable fact that he had murdered more than one victim, so Chen Ji paid no heed to his explanation. With the mallet in his hand, Chen Ji slipped the dead woman's phone into his pocket. He zeroed in on the door, trying to find an opening to escape. I'm a hated individual, everyone around me says so. No, even if they don't vocalize it, I know that's what they think, I can feel it. Wang Qi seemed to have totally lost his mind. His mental state was fractured, and he seemed to have a habit of talking to himself. It was as if he had walked into a mental maze and could not find a way out. As Wang Qi was talking, Chen Ji slowly adjusted the angle that he was standing. He simulated different escape scenarios in his mind, like using something else to distract the madman's attention, but those ideas were removed from his mind because the wooden house was ultimately too small for something like that. Wang Qi's voice became shriller as he continued, a veritable sign that he was breaking down. The longer he stayed there, the greater the danger it was for Chen Ji. He decided to make a move soon and stopped focusing on running simulations. Every muscle in his body tensed. Wang Qi sounded like he was on the verge of lose control as the axe flailed dangerously in the air. Chen Ji caught an opening. He sprinted and knocked into Wang Qi with great momentum. One should not underestimate a cornered rabbit. This was probably the bravest decision Chen Ji had ever made in the past 20 years. When facing off against a serial killer, he acted even more rashly than the killer. In the dark, Wang Qi's reaction was one beat slower than Chen Ji's. He was unable to avoid Chen Ji's mallet, which was flying at his head. Bang! The mallet connected with skin and skull. Chen Ji felt something sticky on his hand, but he did not relax and launched another kick at Wang Qi's stomach. When the man doubled over, Chen Ji blasted out the door. Chen Ji immediately raced into the forest. This time, he did manage to catch the direction he was running in. The trees became sparser and the ground smoother. However, he still had not escaped from danger. He knew someone was chasing after him. The wavering light and the sound of the branches being snapped was the best proof. Chen Ji did not dare to even stop to take a breather. It was not until he saw the cement road that the sound behind him slowly disappeared. Those people should have left already. Chen Ji ran several hundred meters down the cement road before he heard the sound of police siren. He looked down the horizon and saw car lights coming down the road. I'm saved. He jumped up and down in the middle of the road. It was me who called the police. I caught the killer from 4 years ago. Sitting on the wooden table were several used cotton swabs, a bottle of mineral water and an unopened bun. The young officer sitting across the table put down his recorder and took out his phone to show Chen Ji a picture on it. Is he the man you saw? Chen Ji took a look at the picture of several men walking out of a building together. The tallest among them had a tattoo of a peony on the back of his hand. Yes, that's him. Peony represents wealth in Chinese culture and is a common tattoo among gamblers. This man's name is Zhang Peng. He's a gambler who is currently running from a debt of several 100,000 RMB. He's involved in crimes like robbery and mugging. The officer continued flipping through the pictures. Now, take a look at this. This time, it was a picture that looked like it was taken from a traffic camera. After multiple zoom-ins, Chen Ji finally got a clear view of the driver. Sitting in the driver's seat was a frantic-looking fat man. He looked around 90% similar to the fat man Chen Ji saw in the apartment. Looks familiar. With your description, we matched it to our traffic records database. The name of the driver in the picture is Feng Chunli, an out-of-city man. He was responsible for a hit and run and driving under influence. The young officer put aside his phone and rearranged the information laid before him. I believe I've taken all the information I need from you, Mr. Chen, but temporarily, you cannot leave. In a minute, the people from the main city's investigation team will need to get a more thorough statement from you. Hopefully, you'll be willing to cooperate with the investigation. After all, you're our only witness. Of course. Chen Ji leaned down in bed and his emotions began to calm down. Several hours ago, Western Jiujiang City's police station had received a call saying there was a murder going on at Ping'an Apartments. The police mobilized immediately. They ran into Chen Ji on their way to Ping'an Apartments. After some initial questions, the police separated into 2 teams. One went to follow Chen Ji back to the wooden house to detain Wang Qi, and the other went into the forest to capture Ping'an Apartments tenants. When Chen Ji returned to the wooden house, there was only a pool of blood on the floor. Wang Qi had already disappeared. After seeing the fresh blood and the large amount of clothing in the wooden house, they finally believed Chen Ji. They immediately called for the station's help to send more people to seal the mountain. Chen Ji, as the key witness, was given airtight protection. Initially, the police wanted to send him to the station, but to complete the mission given by the black phone, Chen Ji insisted on staying. He told the police there was more evidence inside Ping'an Apartments and insisted on having his statement taken at Ping'an Apartments. So, with 4 officers, 2 inside and 2 outside the door protecting him, Chen Ji lay down in bed, waiting for the mission time to pass. The door was pushed open at 3 a.m. A middle-aged officer in his 40s walked in. He removed his police cap and grabbed the bottle off the table to take several big gulps. Uncle Sanbao, that's mine. Chen Ji sat up in bed when he saw the man. The officer's full name was Li Sanbao, the deputy head of Western Jiujiang City's police station. Coincidentally, he was also the officer responsible for Chen Ji's parents' disappearance case. At the time, it was this Uncle Sanbao who had helped Chen Ji walk out from his depression. "You cheeky little thing, haven't I told you to not refer to me as your Uncle Sanbao? It's Superintendent Li or Inspector Li." Li Sanbao put down the water bottle and scolded him with an irrepressible smile on his face. "I'll let it slide this time since you've done a wonderful good deed this time." Chen Ji stood up to ask, "They've caught the man?" "Of course, don't underestimate the people from the investigation team. They have not only captured Wang Qi but also the other people from the apartment. The only one missing is Zhang Peng." "That's great news. They've even found Wang Qi's fiancé's body. It's being looked over by our forensic expert as we speak. In any case, if you have any questions, you'd better ask them now because I'll need to leave to deal with other things soon." The only reason Inspector Li was there was to give Chen Ji the good news. Both Zhang Peng and Feng Chunli are escaped criminals, but what about the other two? Chen Ji did not hesitate and posed the question on his mind. The woman is Zhang Peng's wife. At most, she'll be guilty of harboring a fugitive. The landlord, though, is a bit more complicated. He was originally a caretaker but got too greedy and cooperated with the rest to seize the senior's property. However, he did not torture the senior. "At least, we couldn't see any obvious wounds on the senior," Inspector Li answered as he put his cap back on. "Why would you ask about that?" "Just curious." Chen Ji listened to He-san and flashed an honest smile. "Although, I hear that aiding the police in capturing fugitives entitles one to some rewards, yes. The banner and badge will be sent to you through mail when the case is closed. Goodbye." "FCK, wait." The young officer who saw this laughed and said, "Inspector Li is just playing with you. If Wang Qi is confirmed to be the arsonist from 4 years ago, then the reward money that you could get is about 30,000 RMB. However, the reward will be given by the local government's treasury and not the law enforcement. Furthermore, the senior once offered 5,000 RMB as reward for any information relating to his family's death. So, there's really a monetary reward." Chen Ji's lips curved into a smile when money was mentioned. "I asked only for fun. Of course, the reason I did this was not for the money. To be able to contribute to the preservation of peace within this wonderful city of ours is the absolute honor." The young officer smiled and did not comment. He went back to his post of guarding the door. Later, after Chen Ji was questioned by the investigation team, the officers volunteered to send him home. However, to complete the mission, Chen Ji gave multiple excuses. He refused to budge from the apartment building. Either he needed to get his stuff from room 408 or he wanted to follow the officer up to the 3rd floor to see the crime scene for himself. In any case, he stayed there until 6 a.m. It was not until the mission completed notice appeared on the black phone that he was willing to leave in the police car. Looking at the scenery that flew past him, Chen Ji did not feel at all tired. He snuck out the black phone quietly and started to look through the mission reward. Player managed to reach the mission location on time, successfully found the party responsible for the murder and survived until dawn. Trial mission, murder by midnight, successful. A new scenario has been unlocked. Player can manipulate the props inside the set freely using the interface available on the phone. Trial mission's completion rate more than 90%. Congratulations for unlocking this mission's hidden item, Wang Qi's missing person notice. Wang Qi's missing person notice 11 malice points. Every day I search for the love that I killed. I killed her again and again, but she always manages to find me. Every morning, when I open my eyes, her stuff will appear in bed with me. I've already sealed her inside the wall, but she seemed to have snuck inside my heart. Finishing the mission with a completion rate more than 90% will get me an additional reward. When Chen Ji realized he had managed to unlock the hidden item, he was admittedly quite excited, but that excitement soon dissipated when he read the item description. Wang Qi's missing person notice. Is the black phone mistaken or something? This feels more like a curse than a reward. After he finished reading the description, a new question popped up in his mind. Although, what are these malice points? Based on the wording, it seemed to refer to the quantification of Wang Qi's malice. A living human being has no use for something like this, so does it mean that it's not meant to be used by a living individual? Chen Ji turned to look at the shadow trailing behind him and shook his head to loosen the thought from his mind. The police car arrived at New Century Park at around 7 a.m. Chen Ji asked the guard for the spare key to the haunted house. He was so exhausted after such an eventful night. When he reached the staff break room, he felt like his whole skeleton was about to shatter. He pulled out his phone and realized it had already died. The live stream, naturally, had already ended. He connected it to the charger and switched it on. The pedometer that came with his phone stated that he had ran for upwards of 10,000 steps that night. He was currently at the top of his friend list, and Xiao Wan even liked this particular achievement of his. Looks like I need to find some time to go training. As long as I can run faster than others, everything should be fine. Chen Ji tapped through his phone to look for He-san's number. He sent a message in case his call woke up He-san, who might have been sleeping. However, the young man called less than 3 seconds after the message was sent. My word. Boss, you're still alive. He-san's voice was so loud that Chen Ji felt a headache coming. Did you wish for me to die so badly? Also, be a little bit quieter or you're going to wake your roommates. Who's sleeping? We were all watching your livestream, and we've been waiting to hear from you. Honestly, Chen Ji was quite touched when he heard this. He was about to ask He-san to thank his friends for the support when he heard He-san say, after the livestream cut off, they all said you're definitely dead and insisted on betting on it. Thank you, boss, you've helped pay for my meals for the rest of the week. So, my life is just worth several meals. Actually, you don't need to share this joy with me, really. Chen Ji was speechless facing this overly honest young man. In any case, boss, thank God you're still alive. I was so afraid to see you end up in our labs. Did you know on our course the lecturer will snap the picture of the victim at his time of death so that we'll have a better idea of what a fresh corpse looks like? That's more than enough information. Chen Ji rubbed his temple and could feel his brain throbbing. One of major reasons I managed to survive is thanks to you, so if there's a chance, I'll also treat you to a meal. After hanging up, Chen Ji clicked open his personal page on the video sharing app and was surprised to discover his follower number had increased by more than 3,000 people. Damn. Even a black screen can get me followers. He turned to look at his private message inbox. It was bursting with messages, but the majority of them were asking, "Host, are you still alive?" These people, it seems like they couldn't wait for me to die. When Chen Ji realized the advertisement for his haunted house was still there and his livestream room and personal account page had not been blocked, he sighed in relief. He tossed the phone to the side, buried his face in the pillow, and stretched lazily in bed. It's time to power down. I believe I deserve a day off, time for bed. After removing his clothes and closing his eyes, Chen Ji soon fell asleep. The sun rose, announcing the arrival of a new day. Sunlight filtered into the room, gilding the edge of the bed in gold. Bang! The gate of the haunted house was thrown open and rushed footsteps came up the stairs. A key was pushed into the lock, and the staff break room was rudely pushed open. The bed shook violently like there was an earthquake. Chen Ji was so spooked that he sprung up in bed. Before he could say anything, he saw something wave before his eyes, and then a shrill and excited voice entered his ears. Boss, you're on television. 2 seconds later, Chen Ji finally returned to reality. Looking at Xiao Wan, who sat beside his pillow, and smelling the fresh scent that drifted from her hair, Chen Ji silently picked up the comforter to cover his exposed upper body before saying, "Slow down, what about me? This is the first time someone I know in real life has been on television. Even though your face has been mosaicked, I could still recognize that it was you easily." Mosaic. Chen Ji still had not caught up to what Xu Wan was saying. Look. Xu Wan passed her phone to Chen Ji. This is a snippet of the video I took from the internet. During the Jiyujiang morning news segment, there was a last-minute story. Chen Ji clicked play, and the image on the screen showed Ping'an Apartments. Justice always prevails. There has been a recent development to the arson that killed a family of 4 at Fuan Apartments 4 years ago. Thanks to the aid of a kind citizen, law enforcement has managed to detain the real culprit to answer for his crimes. Following that was a simple interview attached with a picture of Chen Ji leaving the scene with a police officer. However, Chen Ji's face was heavily pixelated. There was a caption explaining that because one of the fugitives was still on the run, the identity of the kind citizen temporarily would not be revealed to protect said citizen's safety. Boss, that person is you, right? The clothes are the same as the ones you were wearing yesterday. Do you mind letting me put on some clothes first? Chen Ji shook his head slightly. After getting into his clothes, Chen Ji quickly explained everything that had happened at Ping'an Apartments last night to Xu Wan. However, he did not reveal the real reason he was there. Instead, he said that he was there to seek new inspiration to add to the haunted house. After listening to his story, Xu Wan's expression had a huge change. Boss, I'm sure you're tired then? Please take your much-needed rest, leave the visitors to me. She said that out of kindness, but the moment Chen Ji heard that there were visitors, he felt instantly energized. How many are there? More than yesterday. Then, what are we waiting for? Help me get up. Chen Ji had Shuwan go wait at the entrance and he rushed to the toilet to wash his face. Then, he pulled out the black phone to click open the Murder by Midnight scenario. Murder by Midnight, Scream Factor 1 star, this scenario has been completed. Feel free to go up to the 3rd floor to take a look. Warning, the haunted house is running out of internal space. New scenario shall not be unlockable until further expansion. Chen Ji initially thought he had to prepare many things, but he realized he had underestimated the black phone. When was the scenario set up? After putting on his shoes, Chen Ji raced up to the 3rd floor and pushed the door open. The world beyond the door had completely changed. The space stuffed with unwanted props had disappeared, and what awaited him was a long corridor that was dripping with an eerie air. The newly unlocked scenario was huge. It took up more than half of the 3rd floor as well as parts of space from the 2nd floor's Mingun and the 1st floor's Night of the Living Dead. So, there are now 3 floors in total. 1st and 2nd being the appetizer, and the scariest on the 3rd. How come it became so similar to Ping in Apartments? Chen Ji went in to familiarize himself with the new set. The structure and layout were similar to Ping in Apartments. The place was living and breathing anxiety and pain. There were more than 10 traps, and many rooms were connected to each other through hidden doors. Other than that, there were a few nasty hidden gems. This place feels authentic, and it's perfect for an escape the room type of game. I'll have the visitors try it out in a minute. Standing there, the memories from last night reappeared in Chen Ji's mind, and he shivered. He had the most authentic of experience. Due to the limitation of time, Chen Ji only took a cursory look around before walking downstairs. After all, the customers were waiting. Before he even reached the front door, Chen Ji could hear Shuwan. Please be patient, I'm sure boss is coming. In the meantime, you can give the other attractions at the park a try. Gal, is your boss really inside the haunted house? We saw his live stream last night. He was being chased by more than 10 people through the woods. Did he really manage to escape such a dreadful situation? You're kidding. I was also one of the viewers. The host was trapped inside the apartment by a bunch of crazies, and they were closing in on him. I really find it hard to believe that he would be able to escape a trap like that. Are you sure we were watching the same live stream? Last night, other than sounds, there was only a black screen. How the hell did all of you manage to come up with so much information? Regardless, we're here to see him. If not his living self, his dead body will suffice. The sound of discussion had gotten so loud that it attracted the attention of Uncle Shu. Looking at the size of the crowd, he was feeling both glad and worried. Since a particular point in time, this haunted house that felt like it was crumbling suddenly became New Century Park's main attraction. Many people would start lining up early in the morning. Normally, that was definitely good news, but whenever he listened to the words that came out of the visitor's lips, his heart crunched with worry. This cannot be allowed to continue. When I see Xiao Chen next, I'll need to have a talk with him. The young man is definitely hardworking, but I must not let him stray down the dark path. The gate swung open, and Chen Ji walked out from the haunted house. Sorry for making all of you wait. The haunted house is now open. Ticket price is 20 RMB, children are not allowed. The crowd became silent instantly. A few of his viewers rushed over to his side to bombard him with questions about last night. Chen Ji got his 5 minutes of fame. After that, order returned to the crowd, and they entered the haunted house one after another. After the lesson from the previous time, Chen Ji did not dare put Black Friday on loop. Instead, he shuffled it into a long list of sound effects, allowing it to play at random. Chen Ji helped Xiao Wan with her makeup and had her stalk the people in the Mingun scenario while he stayed at the entrance to sell tickets. The number of visitors is slowly climbing, and the reputation has increased a lot. If this continues, I'll reach the criteria to expand the haunted house in a few days. Chen Ji took out the black phone to see how far he was from the target number of visitors he needed to unlock the expansion as well as to take a look at the refreshed daily mission. Easy mission. If you want to provide the visitors a scary experience, then first you have to pay notice to the rhythm and tempo of their experience in the haunted house. Setting off the scare too early might cause the visitors to lose their interest, so it is suggested that you install some sound detectors or surveillance cameras in the haunted house to keep track of your visitors' progress. Normal mission. The key to a good scare is the element of surprise. For example, put up the scary source opposite from the spot that normally captures the visitor's eyes. Inspect the haunted house to see whether all the props fit this criterion. Nightmare mission. There are weird sounds coming from the bathroom every midnight. If you want to know why, follow my directions. Daily missions will refresh every day at midnight. User can only apply for one mission each day, and the reward corresponds to the difficulty of the mission. Beware. The more difficult the mission, the more dangerous it'll be, so please choose carefully. After taking a quick glance at the daily missions, Chen Ji first rejected the nightmare mission. After 2 sleepless nights, what he needed more than anything was rest. Furthermore, he already had one mirror monster to deal with. He really did not think he could deal with 2 monsters at the same time. The rewards from nightmare missions are most applicable directly to myself, giving me some kind of skill, but the reward is proportional to the risk, so temporarily, that's ruled out. The easy mission requires a certain amount of money, at least until the monetary reward from capturing Wang Qi arrives. Completing that sounds impossible. Chen Ji considered the options and came to the conclusion that the normal mission was the one best available. Setting up the scares opposite from the focal point, this is not such a bad idea. Applying it into my haunted house will definitely bring more surprises to the visitors. After accepting the normal mission, Chen Ji leaned against the entrance as he kept up the channel of communication with Xu Wan. Noon arrived soon after, and the crowd gradually dissipated. Chen Ji called for Xu Wan to come out and told her to go for her lunch break as he went back to the Ming'an set alone. He had personally designed this scenario and had put much thought into each scare. Since he had accepted the normal mission, he spent the whole afternoon while Xu Wan was away on updating and improving the set. Normally, when the visitors entered the haunted house, they would be mentally prepared, so it would not be easy to scare them then. Therefore, he needed something to distract their attention to make them think that something was about to jump out at them from that direction. While their attention was fully occupied by the fake scare, the real scare would assault them from a completely unexpected direction. This normal mission was far easier than Chen Ji expected. In just a few hours, he received the alert on the black phone that he had finished the mission. You've completed the normal mission. There is more than one way to scare a person. The element of surprise is the key to a good scare. Congratulations, you have gained the mission reward, Dr. Skullcracker's uniform. Dr. Skullcracker's uniform, item attire. Clark has worked at the mental hospital for over 20 years. Constant exposure to mental patients slowly distorted his view on life. One day, he decided to end everything once and for all. He believed the source of madness had seeped into his patients' brains, so the only solution was to crack their skulls open to remove the source directly. All in the name of saving his patients. After Black Friday, Chen Ji had received another item. He clicked on the app, and the black phone told him the item had been placed inside the props room. The timing is just perfect. If I combine this with the murder by midnight scenario, it should create a wonderful arrangement. Several ideas cropped up in Chen Ji's mind. He grabbed a pen and paper to write them down when his phone rang. He-san. Chen Ji answered the call. What's up? Boss, do you still remember what I told you last time? He-san kept his voice lowered, as if afraid that someone might hear him. About how the seniors in our faculty have formed a warring party to take revenge for Senior Gao Rushui after you scared her to her tears last time. They're already on their way. Boss, you'd better be prepared. They're coming right now. Chen Ji actually did not mind He-san's seniors at all. I'm risking my life by giving you this information. The seniors are planning to shoot a funny video inside your haunted house and put it on the internet to make Senior Gao laugh. I hope you won't be angry. After all, our course only has 5 classes and, in total, only 7 girls. The one you made cried was the prettiest of them all, so boss, take care. He-san heard coming footsteps, so he quickly hung up. Want to shoot a funny video at my haunted house? Chen Ji put his phone away, and a wicked grin appeared on his face. They say medical students have bigger guts than most. They'll be the perfect guinea pigs to try out my new scenario, and we'll see who's laughing then. After lunch break, Chen Ji went downstairs to open the gate. The visitors who missed the chance to visit the haunted house in the morning all rushed over. Some of them purposely came to pay the place a visit after watching Chen Ji's videos and livestream online. Some of them were dragged there by families or friends, while the rest were merely curious. Since the line for this attraction was so long, it had to be for something fun, right? Ticket price is 20 RMB. For the best effect, we suggest going in with a group of 3. Chen Ji maintained the order as he communicated with Xu Wan. Both of them were busy beyond belief. Time flew, and when it was 3 p.m., 7 fashionable youths entered the new Century Park. They made a beeline for the haunted house like they were on a mission. Each of them had different personality, and they did not talk much among themselves. They stood in the line for the haunted house quietly, making the atmosphere become weirdly serious. Several minutes later, when the earlier group of visitors came out holding each other for support, the tallest among them walked toward Chen Ji. Boss, 6 tickets. His voice was deep and gravelly. Chen Ji raised his head to look at the young man and glanced at the group behind him. But there are 7 of you. This one is just responsible for bringing us here. The tall youth yanked He-san to the front. Boss, I won't be going in. He-san was traumatized by his earlier experience in the haunted house. After smiling at Chen Ji, he hurriedly squirreled back to the crowd. Since you're already here, how can I leave you all alone standing outside? Here, this is on the house. Chen Ji passed the tall youth 7 tickets. All of you are from Jiyujing Medical University, right? Nice to make your acquaintance. Chen Ji's kindness and enthusiasm made the few medical students feel rather embarrassed. He-san, since the boss has gifted you the ticket, it will be wrong if you refuse his kindness. The tall youth passed everyone their ticket, but what they did next confused the other visitors. They did not enter the haunted house directly and seemed to congregate outside it for some kind of tactical meeting. He-san and myself will be a group, Monkey and Lao Zhao will be a group, Lao Song, Xiao Hui and Shi Ling, you 3 will be the last group. Everyone has memorized the tactics that were posted on the forum before we departed, right? Yes. It's all memorized. The layout of the set has been drawn out by He-san already, and we're familiar with every trick the place has to offer. Be prepared and show no trace of fear, we mustn't bring shame to Jiyujing Medical University. Understood. Alright, from now on, put yourself into the correct mental state and bring that adrenaline up. Increase the breathing rate, imagine that you're going skydiving or bungee jumping, and make your every cell come alive. Indeed, be fierce, be tough. You're fiercer than the fiercest of ghosts. You're not afraid of anything. Do you still remember the oath we made when we joined the university? A straight heart leads a right path. Jiyujing Medical University, speaker of the living and the dead. Alright, let's go. The speech was so inspiring that even the other visitors could not help but clap and cheer. Even Chen Ji was internally impressed. He-san and the tall youth departed from the group and said, the 2 of us will lead the way, wait for our good news. The 2 stepped toward Chen Ji with fire and spirit. Just the 2 of you. Your rules only allow a maximum of 3 people in one group, don't they? Oh, that's the rule for the Ming'an scenario. Don't mind that little detail, all 7 of you can come in all at once. I wouldn't want the rest of you to waste your time waiting for others. Chen Ji led the group into the haunted house that felt like it was colder than the temperature outside. First, all of you need to sign the disclaimer agreement on the table, waiving away your right to sue the haunted house for any and all injuries, supposed or otherwise, before I can allow you to continue. Wait, this wasn't here last time. He-san wandered over to the table. That's because you were my first customer to faint inside the attraction. Chen Ji smiled kindly at the group of students. I believe He-san will have already briefed all of you on the history of this place, so I won't go into the details. All I want to give you is just a reminder and warning. Chen Ji slowly pulled his smile away. He pulled out his phone to search for the morning news. The case at Ping'an Apartments 4 years ago was finally solved, but there is still a killer on the loose. Of course, this has nothing to do with us, but when I came to work this morning, the door of the haunted house was left open like someone had wandered in. Ping'an Apartments and New Century Park are both on the western side of town, hopefully, it's just me overthinking. In a few words, Chen Ji managed to plant the seed of doubt. He did not need to convince He-san's group that was the truth, he merely needed to implant the suggestion in their mind. After all, one's imagination could always conjure up things that were scarier than reality. After signing the agreement, Chen Ji led them up to the 3rd floor and slowly pushed the door to the murder by midnight scenario open. A cold draft picked up from somewhere. Along the dark corridors, it felt like eyes were peeping at them from the half-open doors. The corridor led down to an endless staircase and maze-like turns and corners. The ceiling was charred, and everywhere they turned, they could see scratches like someone had desperately tried clawing their way out. The fire of the group was half-stifled the moment they saw this. Every single one of them froze on the spot, and they turned to look at He-san in unison. Where's the Sayuan? This is different from what you told us. I was training with weights the whole night to lift the coffin lid. The eyes on He-san almost made him cry. The honest young man could only turn to Chen Ji for help, but the latter ignored him. The theme of this scenario is called Murder by Midnight. Please do not take any pictures, and violators will be personally responsible for the possible consequences. The exit is hidden within the set, and the time limit is 20 minutes. If you wish to surrender, just yell at the camera, and I will come get you. After all of them entered the corridor, Chen Ji smiled at them and said in parting, enjoy. Like and subscribe.